So we're going to get into the topics here.
The meat and potatoes.
Meat and potatoes of the episode, the PlayStation Mini. So we were originally going to, do the rundown of the whole conference first. I'll do that really quick, and then we'll actually go more in depth on all of that stuff later. So the way the PlayStation meeting worked is they came out and talked about the PS4 Slim, as we thought it was, but it's actually the standard model moving forward. And they gave a release date and price point of September 15th and $299. Then they announced the PlayStation 4 Pro, which we'll be going into in depth in just a second. And it's coming out November 10th, 2016 at a price of $399 US. They showed off games running on the PS4 Pro. They talked about forwards compatibility, which we'll get into later. And they showed some gameplay from Andromeda. Not gameplay, but they showed the Spider-Man game. They talked about HDR and 4K upscaling and all that stuff. But let's actually, before we get into that stuff, we'll get into the PS4 Pro. First of all, the name, weird. Wouldn't have guessed it. The Neo, I like the Neo a lot more actually than the PlayStation 4 Pro.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Xbox 360 do this first? Wasn't there an Xbox 360 Pro?
Elite. It was Xbox 360 Elite.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Though the Pro does seem like a Windows product, like Premiere Pro.
Well, that and actually the original 360. I think you're talking about the arcade versus the Pro, Dom.
Yeah, there was a Pro version of the Xbox 360.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's different than this, though.
Yeah. So let's just talk about the PlayStation 4 Pro as a whole. So they came out and they had Mark Cerny come out on stage, and he talked about all of the points of it having HDR and 4K upscaling and what this means for video games, and he went on and on and on in a very boring tone. Love Mark Cerny. The guy's super smart, as you can obviously state by just looking at him, but I don't think people really wanted to hear him talk and go on and on.
I don't know that he's so monotonous as much as it is soft-spoken.
I guess, yeah, that could be a better way of putting it. So the PlayStation 4 Pro, a lot of people were surprised at the way they came out and announced this. They didn't really even talk about the specs specifically. They stated that it had the GPU and it had a 1 terabyte hard drive. So I don't know where to start here with the PlayStation 4 Pro. Just when you guys want to bring up let's just talk about this. What parts of this you want to talk about?
I got a starter for you, Jared.
Okay.
How about that's the ugliest piece of shit console I've ever fucking seen.
The design, okay.
It doesn't get uglier than that thing, dude. I was racking my brain thinking of a console that is actually uglier than that, and I can't.
So Sony, I think what Sony was thinking is they wanted people to understand that this is still a PlayStation 4, but they wanted also to make sure that people understood it was different than the regular PlayStation 4 when you looked at it. So we'll just add a third layer.
We got an extra stack.
So it's compared to those original drawings, those Foxconn drawings we looked at, which were just crappy drawings. They were correct technically, but it looks much better than it did in those drawings. And the more I see it, and I've looked at more high res and up close photos, it's starting to grow on me already. I mean, I'm definitely not in love with the way it looks either.
I think you're lying to yourself, Tom.
No, because regular PS4 looks way better. Absolutely.
This thing looks even worse than the original Xbox One. This is the worst.
No, both Xboxes look better. Xbox original and Xbox One look way better than this console.
Even the new PlayStation 4 standard model moving forward looks better, and I didn't really like that either. It looked like a Roku device.
Yeah, it looks bad too, but it's almost like it looks bad, but it almost looks good next to that terrible ass.
All right,
Pro.
let's not dwell on this too long. Since it's subjective
I will, Dom, because this is the ugliest console that will ever have been released once it is released in November. And Sony has to realize, first of all, that's their precedence. Sony has a precedence for products that look clean, they look classy, they look solid and sturdy, and that looks like none of those things.
I don't know.
Like it would break
easily.
It looked way too heavy. It looks like the PS4 or PS3 fat. If you're going to get me to upgrade to a console from a console that I already have, I already have the regular PS4 like most people, and then I'm going to either trade up or, just eat it on the cost of the original PS4 to upgrade to this PS4.5, the Pro version, we can get into the whole gambit as far as they did absolutely nothing to entice me to buy the system, but the biggest point, the cherry on top, was how ugly this console looks. So, I would buy one if it didn't look so bad.
So I think the next thing I want to move on to, because I think it's You can't go much more about saying it. It is. I think it definitely doesn't fit what I'm used to seeing from Sony. Like, I own an Xbox, but I always think that the Sony consoles, for the most part, look pretty clean. And I think it looks to me, it looks like a humidifier or something. I don't know. It looks weird.
Yeah. Everyone who's talking about it certainly mostly thinks it's ugly.
Yeah.
Certainly, like, that's clearly the consensus on the internet right now.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think it's going to grow on me.
So I want to talk about going into this. You said that you don't know, like, they didn't sell you on this. I want to talk about who is this console for? Like, who do we think this was supposed to be pitched to? Go ahead, Dom.
So I've been reading a lot into it since the conference because I agree with you guys. Like, the conference presentation wise was just boring. Like, if you just look at, from a presentation point of view and don't even care about the message at all, it was boring, quite frankly. Like, Mark Cerny is probably a genius, but yeah, he's kind of boring to talk to or listen to. But that doesn't really bother me because I was kind of looking past that at the actual message, and I loved every last thing they said about this box. So I just want to, like, clear up what it is and what it isn't, because there's a ton of confusion, I feel like, out there, and that's part of Sony's problem, really, is not the box itself, but their messaging, and people don't understand it.
Exactly. Like, how could they talk for that long and people still be confused as to what it is?
Right. So basically, it will not play native 4K games. Like, I mean, maybe a few will.
Yeah.
But it upscales, or it plays natively at around 1440p or 1800, and then upscales the rest of the way through, like, interpolate some fancy words that kind of, like, funk with the image a little bit to make it fit on the 4K screen and everything. So it will still look drastically better than PS4 games would, right?
Yeah, but it's really rendering it at 2K, and they're touting it as a 4K machine, which is really misleading.
Yeah, that's why it's tough.
That's why 1800's 2K, and so
that's also why
of the resolution that they're touting it is.
That's why the price isn't really that surprising either. I thought it was going to be more expensive, but then once all this information came out, like, okay, then that's why they could hit 400. That kind of makes sense.
So that's the most important thing here is they hit the price point of what the PS4 was when it first launched, which is huge. So you're getting a pretty near 4K game playing machine for the same price the PS4 was only 3 years ago. I think that's why a lot of people don't like the half step, but only going a half step was important in hitting that price point. I see why they did it. If people buy it, we'll see. But
I understand where you're coming from, but I think you're giving them a little bit too much credit. I think this is Sony being backed into a corner, being blindsided by the Scorpio, and they did the best they could with the messaging on this, right? Like, what better if they could have done with this?
But they had this thing planned, and everything was already planned before the Scorpio was even announced.
I know, that's the point. That's why I'm saying it was blindsided. I think they thought that Microsoft is probably going to go the same way and do these small, iterative, small steps. Like, this is a half step. I think that they thought that, that maybe this was the way things were going, and then they come out and hear this whole thing about, Scorpio. Like, it's weird to me that they would pull this from E3 before it showcased. This doesn't seem like something that's... This is something
I don't think they did.
There's no. Andrew House said it's not going to be there. Like, why would he have to come out and state that then?
But I'm just saying, like, he didn't. That doesn't mean they pulled it. Like, it was originally planned to show in E3, and they changed their minds. I don't think that happened at all.
I think people are overestimating the fact that the Scorpio and what it, the way it hit when it hit the news. I think people are overestimating how much it affected Sony's plans. I really don't think it did.
So you think
all.
so?
Yeah, I agree.
I think it might have pissed Sony off, like, oh shit, we fucked up, but they didn't change any of their plans, I bet.
They still like the way it fit in the market, and they kept everything how they planned, because this is what they planned, what they've been working on, what they want, their vision.
So answer my question, who is this for?
So, that's what, we got a little distracted. So, in addition to almost playing games at 4K and looking better and having HDR, for people that don't have a 4K TV, it actually apparently is going to offer a lot of benefits too.
Just like the Xbox One S.
Well, what do you mean? What does the Xbox One S do for people with 1080p TVs?
It upscales it the same way.
Well, if you
I think the PS4 is going to be a lot bigger difference. I think he said you have twice the CPU, GPU power.
Not twice the CPU. They just stated double the
just GPU.
Or double GPU power. You have some of the tests that Digital Foundry was doing when the Xbox One S came out. they just seem a lot lower as far as the increments.
Well, yeah, the Xbox One S is obviously less powerful in this. That's obvious, but like, to me, it still is weird who this is for. This seems like it's for Dom in the sense of Dom's original PS4 is, you know, breaking down and he wants to buy a new one. Dom is a guy who enjoys graphic fidelity and he understands that and he likes his games to look better. So therefore, instead of buying a new PS4 at $300, he's going to buy the one that's $400.
So for example, Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider rather, they came out and said, is it Crystal Dynamics? They said PS4 Pro users are going to have 3 different options to choose from to play this game on 1080p TVs. So you can either have the frame rate bumped up to 60 frames per second, or you can choose to increase the textures and detail and that kind of stuff and keep it at 30 frames per second, or you can choose to render the game at a higher frame rate and then push it back down, which ultimately ends up being like an extreme form of anti-aliasing. So that's just one example. I would imagine that most devs won't get that into it and give that much to the pro users, other than if you have a 4K TV. But that's huge, and that they hit on that as part of their conference, and that's why I don't even have a 4K TV yet. But this thing is still going to give me a lot of benefits before I get one. So I don't know that. I think this box is just so perfect. I just love that this is happening. I don't know. I can't think of something bad about it. Now, it might not be for you, but that doesn't make it bad that they made it, I suppose.
No, yeah. Seen it, Dom?
He asked if you've seen it.
Yeah, it's not the most beautiful thing in the world.
That's a bad part about it. That's a really bad part about it.
Well, okay, but that doesn't even really matter.
I think it does. Honestly,
people.
I think it matters more than you would imagine to a lot of people. I think that's why Apple started offering colored phones in the last few years. I think that's why there's white and black and different colored PlayStations. I think people like customization, and I also think they like having a good-looking entertainment center. They like having their stereo receiver and their DVD or Blu-ray player all look nice and all like be set up nicely. Now, not everybody, but the type of person that would be buying this is that type of person I'm describing. Someone who has
it's a black box. It doesn't stick out. It's just there. It's not a phone that you're carrying around with you and pulling out in front of people every day. It's just a box that's sitting under your TV that you barely see.
I disagree, man. I look at my PS4 a lot. Like the faceplate that I just got, I'm looking at it all the time just because of how pretty it is. And secondly, even though it's a big black box, it's a big black box. And a lot of people have that issue with the Xbox One. The fact that it is so big. The fact that it's black doesn't really help it like blend into anything. I think it just sticks out a lot. And it looks really heavy and thick to me. I mean, I know I've already made the point that it looks bad, but I do definitely think that it will affect sales negatively. The fact that it looks so bad. Absolutely negatively affects sales.
So I don't think... There's a lot of people complaining that this thing shouldn't exist, and I don't mind that it exists. Maybe it could be designed better. Obviously, Jordan would like that. I don't mind that it exists. The issue I have is, like, it doesn't seem like an important enough of, like, a change to warrant it being the highlight of the meeting.